Well, welcome back to day 15.
Day 15.
Of the 21-day relational challenge. If you have friends or family or coworkers that you think might benefit from this challenge, please share it with them. They can jump in right here where we're at, or they can go back to day 1.
They could go all the way back to day 1.
Because all of the videos are there on our Facebook page and on our Instagram and are going to remain there. Our intention through all of this was to encourage people in their relationships during this very stressful time. And based on the feedback, it's been helpful. So
at least people have
Yeah.
laughed.
This is what they're telling us anyway.
That's right. So day 13 and 14 was all about gratitude, disciplining ourselves to not focus on what we lack, but instead to think about what we do have. And it isn't always easy to do.
No.
But enough about gratitude. Like, after another COVID-19 weekend that sucked the very life out of... I'm ready to fight. Let's go.
Let's have it out, right? Today is all about conflict. Now, our first fight happened on our honeymoon.
It did.
In Disneyland. More specifically on the ride called It's a Small World.
Yes, I looked at the Matterhorn and I said, let's go on the Matterhorn ride. And Leanne looked at me and she said, I'm not going. It's scary.
Scared of rides, right?
And so, as a compromise, we went on It's a Small World. And to have all these wooden, like, puppets.
Everyone, just singing at you.
It's a small world full of love and cheer and all that kind of stuff. It just, by the end of it...
We had it out.
Well, we didn't really say anything at all to each other.
But then we got off that ride and I went right over to the Matterhorn, got in line, ended up on the front of the cart, and we did that ride.
And I
screamed all the way down.
Yeah, and then you got in line and did it again because it was so fun.
Exactly.
I totally won that one.
But I remember that first kind of conflict. And honestly, I thought, oh my goodness, my marriage is in jeopardy here.
And I remember thinking, who is this person that I just married?
See, we came into our marriage with different conflict styles that would show up over and over again through the 30 years that we've been married. And we needed to learn to resolve our differences in productive ways. So here we are in the pandemic when we're all under pressure with our stress behavior surfacing.
What?
Yes, and conflict is sure to follow.
So what do we know about conflict? First of all, conflict is inevitable. I love what Max Lucado says when he says conflict is inevitable, but combat is optional. In your relationships, you will have conflict. The world is made up of all kinds of different people, and because we are all so very different, we will rub each other the wrong way. At times, people see things differently.
And so it's not the worst thing ever. So don't panic. It's going to happen. I'm actually really suspicious of couples who say that they have no conflict because honestly, it's just not possible. If you don't have conflict, you aren't talking about anything that matters. So embrace conflict.
So number 2. Conflict will fester if ignored. Sometimes people think that if they ignore an issue, it will go away. Instead, it festers just below the surface, and it shows up in all kinds of ways that are toxic to the person and to those around them. It shows up in all kinds of different attitudes. When we are with couples, it is wild the little things that show up. They say, "Oh, we're fine.
Yeah.
We're fine. We're good." But you hear little mutters. Like little snide remarks, eye rolls,
yes.
Where it's almost like the spouse is begging you to take their side in a multi-year war.
And we never take sides. It can also show up in our bodies, ulcers or chronic back pain, that kind of thing. The connectivity of our body, mind, and spirit is just amazing. So you can't ignore conflict. Thirdly, conflict is an opportunity. If we embrace it, it can open up opportunities for growth, both personally and in the relationship. See, when you're able to work through a conflict in a relationship, it builds trust. And because of that, you can feel more secure knowing that your relationship isn't going to just fall over at the first, gust of wind, but you can survive challenges and disagreements.
Each of us has our own conflict style, default ways by which you go about handling interpersonal conflict. And this is based on the Thomas, and listen to his second name, the Thomas Kilmann conflict model. Knowing our default style is an important piece of self-awareness for us. There's the accommodator. An accommodator puts aside their own needs or desires in order to please others.
Then there's the avoider, and an avoider completely ignores the conflict, like la la la, hoping that if we pretend that it's not there, that it's going to go away.
A competitor is in it to win it, and they take a firm stance and refuse to see the perspectives of other people.
While a compromiser attempts to find a solution that at least will partially please everybody. Now, our own fight style is a combination of our personalities and our families of origin. I grew up in a really loving family, but I didn't get to see open conflict and how it could actually be resolved. I just never saw it. And therefore, I became a classic avoider.
You know, it's weird. Like I see myself in all of those styles, but
So you switch up the styles?
But I think I started out as a competitor, you know, and then with you, like that didn't work so well.
No.
That competing thing.
Well, if you're competing and I'm avoiding, like it's...
Yeah, so then I turned to accommodating.
Right.
To probably, well, no, not probably. It was
an
too
unhealthy
much.
thing
Yeah.
where, anyway, but that's a whole 30-year story. So each
That's
of
the
these...
book.
That's the book. Each of these styles is flawed. So the preferred way to deal with conflict is by collaborating. And a collaborating style attempts to find a solution that will meet needs of all the parties. The aim is a solution that satisfies everyone and ends up being a win-win. And this really...
A win-win-win.
I don't even understand what you mean by that. But this...
Well, actually, it's a win for you, and it's a win for me, and it's a win for our community. Like, seriously, like it's bigger than that.
Exactly. So this is what we aspire to. So our approach when we have conflict is to remind ourselves we're on the same team.
Yeah,
my word.
that is a common phrase. Hey, we're on the same team.
I remember when we were raising little kids and it was just too much and like, wah, you know, and we would literally stop and say, let's remember we're on the same team here. We are not opposing. So
side by side rather than adversarial, looking at the problem rather than pointing fingers at each other. So
like most people fight like this.
Yeah. But what if you took the problem and put it on the table in front of you and sat side by side and addressed the problem together?
Exactly. And we'll talk a little bit more about that tomorrow. But walking together or sitting on the same side of the table looking at the problem together really helps create this kind of collaborative experience that you want.
And just so you know, the blame game is not appropriate. So for those of you who are saying that your husband's chronic back pain is a result of your husband's behavior, no, that is not true.
No blaming. So in conflict, we assume that there are only two options. There's our option, and then there's their option. And one of the many things that I appreciate about you, Darcy, is that you will often ask, is there a third way?
Yeah, with our negative bias and our self-bias, we always come to conflict thinking we have it all figured out.
Well, of course.
We're about right. Who's right and who's wrong.
You're wrong.
And how it's about you being heard, etc. Mm-hmm. But this lens distorts reality. Thus, looking for a third way through the issue side by side is incredibly healthy and helps us work towards collaboration. And I've yet... like in working with couples under intense stress and teams, it's never just my side or their side. There's always other issues and other solutions.
Exactly. So here's your two-part challenge. We want you to identify your fight style. You have a default style that you use. And in the comments below, you'll find a link to a quick free assessment that you can use. It's from a Canadian university. So take the assessment and talk about the results with your spouse, your roommate, your friend, your family member, whoever.
Yeah, so watch for that. We'll put that up immediately following. And then challenge number 2, put your conflict on the table. Go shoulder to shoulder, not head to head, and look at it from a different perspective. Don't have a conflict yet, because in part...
That's tomorrow.
That's tomorrow. In part 2, we're going to get super practical and unpack how to resolve a conflict step by step. And I'm really hoping that we don't fight in putting that together. But look at it. Get curious. Are there different ways to see it? Talk about it as a team.
Yeah.
And remember, together you've got this.